Thanks for that, Ekta. Of course, this was in the making for a long time, and since the two stocks were converging towards each other and coming to that point where the merger of 1:1 of CAIRN and Vedanta can really happen, it was in the making, and 1:1 is still the ratio of that particular merger. But remember, there is a premium now given over and above what was earlier agreed upon. So 1 redeemable preference share has been increased to 4 redeemable preference share. That means 10 rupees you were getting apart from 1:1 swap. That is, the CAIRN shareholders would get 1 share of Vedanta as well as 40 rupees of preference redeemable share. So that is the ratio now. It is definitely coming in as a very, very good deal for the CAIRN shareholders. They managed to get something more out of Vedanta, especially with CAIRN being more cash-rich company, and Vedanta really needs its cash so that it can repay a large amount of debt on its books as well. In fact, if my colleague Anisha is still there, she was the one who had been also tracking it very, very closely and was in the loop about this particular bit. All right, Mr. Tulsian is right here with us. Mr. Tulsian, what do you make of the premium that has been given 1:1 plus 4 preference redeemable shares?
Nisha, I don't understand that where is the premium. Let me just explain you here. CAIRN India closed today at 192. Company have proposed 1:1 swap of Vedanta, that is 1 share of Vedanta, and then they will be giving 4 preference shares of 7.5% coupon. That if I take the present value at 8 rupees, the face value of 8 rupees with 18 months maturity, I'm taking that 8 rupees 32. That makes 200 rupees. That means you are giving 200 rupees against the value of 192. Now, if you really see Vedanta, the kind of run-up which we have seen in the share price from 70 to 170 in this last 3 months, will the institutional shareholders be comfortable with this kind of run-up? Because the people, those who have been, in the market or those who have been tracking the stock, they have all been very circumspect on the kind of rise which we have seen in the share price of Vedanta. So you can't take that as a realistic price that, okay, these are my correct value. Now come on the history of the Vedanta group. Whichever companies they have merged, now Vedanta is a creation of merger of Madras Aluminium, Sesagoa, Sterlite Industries, and that is how Vedanta has emerged. Now you are merging CAIRN India also. So I don't think that any shareholder of CAIRN, or even if I would have been a shareholder of CAIRN, I would not have been comfortable with this kind of merger, and I would have exited from CAIRN. Now come on the legal side of this. What is the situation prevailing at the government end? CAIRN India is having CAIRN PLC as a shareholder to the extent of about 10% holding they are having in this CAIRN India, on which the government of India has put a stay that those shares cannot get transferred. Now, even if I presume that LIC will give permission to this merger, because in that event, the finance ministry will be asking for the equivalent amount of security. They will be saying to the CAIRN India that, okay, you give us the equivalent security of the 10% value. Now come on the rationale behind this merger. Now let's understand that CAIRN India, CAIRN PLC has a liability in respect to the share transfer which they have done before coming to the public issue. So if now CAIRN PLC doesn't have any value, which nobody knows or which we don't talk, if for any reason that liability gets crystallized, directly or indirectly it will fall on CAIRN India. So you are carrying a liability on the head of CAIRN India. You have no growth plans. You have these kind of merger in which the Vedanta prices have seen, having run up so much in this last 4 to 5 months. So I don't think that in this background, when the litigations, counter litigations, even CAIRN PLC have filed a claim against the government of India. So in that case, Finance Ministry will direct the LIC to give NOC for this merger or not. So even if you see the past track record of the promoter, or maybe both these transactions independently, honestly, I don't see any reason. Okay, CAIRN, whatever amount they have to receive for up to 2016 has been received from Vedanta. But what about the next installment, which is falling beyond 2018? So I think this is more of a mutual convenience for the benefit of the group merger. This whole merger has been created. But because yeah.
That's right, Mr. Tulsian. There has been a lot of cash management, as you are really pointing out. But what would you say about the stock price movement? Come Monday morning, how do you see CAIRN's stock as well as Vedanta stock moving? Because you're saying there is only downside when it comes to CAIRN India's shareholders. And of course, a lot of benefits coming in for Vedanta shareholders because they do not have cash to repay debt. And now they are going to, after merger, get that cash which is on the books of CAIRN India.
No, Nisha, let me now put the things again, in the right perspective. Firstly, if the CAIRN is posting flat results, yesterday we have seen those results getting released in the night at 8 o'clock. And we are seeing the share moving up by 8%. That means the share either has moved up because of this news of the revised merger or because of the momentum play, number one. Number two. Now, suppose if I am a shareholder of CAIRN India, that is what I advise that I will, if I would have been a shareholder of CAIRN India, I would have sold my share at 192 and would have got out. Now, secondly, if you take a call on Vedanta, I am not convinced with the price of 169 because there has been no change in the fundamentals. Even Q1 numbers are not out. And if you see the Hindustan Zinc numbers, which have been released, they have shown a declining trend. Eventually, that 65% of Hindustan Zinc gets merged into Vedanta. So I'm not convinced on the Vedanta as well. Then I have my apprehensions on these regulatory permissions and the LIC consent, coming in for this merger. So again, it can go into limbo. I don't know whether this whole transaction can get consummated in the next 6 months because this merger process generally take about 5 to 6 months if you consider calling shareholders meeting, High Court merger petitions and all sort of things. So I have my doubt because this has been there for last 1 year. After 1 year, the management have gone ahead for this merger. They have revised the merger. And in this background, because cash is a known fact that CAIRN India and Hindustan Zinc both are having huge cash lying with them. And the only motto of the group is to utilize those cash. And I don't think that people will really be happy as an individual shareholder of CAIRN India. So that's what I've said. I'm unable to take a call on the share price behavior on Monday on both CAIRN and Vedanta. Because if the momentum is there, if the share can, I'm not trying to say that there has been any kind of manipulation, but there has been definitely some kind of market making having, seen happening in both these stocks, CAIRN and Vedanta. So if you have these kind of control or grip or market making happening, the share price can move to in any direction. There is no fundamental reason. It is like tossing a coin. You say whether it is head or tail. It is just like taking a call. You just can't take a fundamental call on the stock behavior going forward based on this news on Monday.
So, Mr. Tulsian, obviously it is very, very difficult to take a call on the stock movement. But if you are a shareholder in Vedanta and with this kind of a merger happening purely from business prospects, what is the call that you would take as a long-term investor?
See, Nisha, that is precisely my point. I have said that in Vedanta, now you quickly go through the business, what they all have. The Vedanta will eventually be having 65%, which already they have. 65% in Hindustan Zinc, 51% in Balco. They have copper smelter. Then they will be now having the CAIRN directly getting merged into, or otherwise also they have this. They have this shareholding into CAIRN India. Now, in the biggest drag or drain for Vedanta is their Vedanta Aluminium, which the company has, when they have acquired the ownership of Vedanta Aluminium to the extent of 100%, that was itself very damaging for the shareholders of Vedanta.
Right.
So now what is happening that 45,000 crore has been locked up in Vedanta Aluminium, on which the company is getting an EBIT return of 4%. And mind it that on Vedanta, they have a debt of 72,000 crore also in their books. Forget the cash held by Hindustan Zinc and CAIRN. On the net basis, it will get net off, and maybe there will be a debt of about 15,000-20,000 crore. So what my point is, in Vedanta, Hindustan Zinc is a profit-making company, but that is separately listed also, where I can take an individual call if I have my bullish view, and which I am keeping my bullish view, because the Hindustan Zinc will start performing well from Q3 numbers, because they have some issues of mines from open cast to underground. The shift is happening. So because of that, we have seen a drop in the performance of Hindustan Zinc for Q1, and that is likely to remain for Q2 as well.
Of course,
so
of course.
I have positive view on. Let me just quickly finish that. I have a positive view on Hindustan Zinc, but not on any other business, because in copper it is just the TCRC which is maintained, and same thing is enjoyed by Hindalco also. So you have a big drain of Vedanta Aluminium, where an investment of 45,000 crores. Now comes the last business model is of Vedanta Energy, the Sterlite Energy of about 9,000 megawatt power plant, which they have started, operating it fully. Maybe till 6 months back, they were operating at 4,500 megawatts. Now they have, reached to the level of 9,000 megawatt, but I don't know the PLF. I don't know the financial working of the Sterlite Energy or maybe the power division. So my overall view on the Vedanta is cautious. So there is no point in taking a valuation of 169 or the present price of 169 as realistic for the stock.
I agree, Mr. Tulsian. Of course, you gave a very exhaustive account of the entire Vedanta company and with various metals that it deals with. And of course, Hindustan Zinc is the bright spot. And of course, it's cyclical in nature. So many of the metals are not doing that well. Hold your thought there, Mr. Tulsian. I'll go to my colleague, Anisha, who had been tracking it very closely and in fact was the first one to alert today that the board meet is meeting today itself. In fact, Anisha, you had all the details before the press release really came out. Take us through the details for the benefit of our viewers.
Well, yes, Nisha, so I'll run you through the details that are coming from the presentation. So as per the revised merger terms, the shareholders of CAIRN will get 1 share of Vedanta Limited each, and along with that, they'll get 4 shares, 4 redeemable preference shares with a face value of 10 rupee per share. Now, they will also have an attached dividend of 7.5% per annum, and the tenure of these redeemable preference share is going to be 18 months. Also, they mention in the press release that the calculation has been done at the implied premium of close to 20% to 1 month of the weighted average price of the CAIRN share value. Moving on to the timelines, they say that they will seek shareholders approval for this particular revised terms of merger in month of September 2016, and they expect to close the entire transaction and complete the merger by Q1 of calendar year 2017. Back to you, Nisha.
All right. Thank you so much, Anisha, for getting us all those important details. Remember, here at CNBC-TV18, we were in the know that that particular board meeting is expected to be concluded today. All right, let's go straight across to some more experts joining in. Deven, Choksey, as well as Prakash, Diwan. Both of them are joining us. Gentlemen, thanks for really taking time out and joining us on CNBC-TV18 on this breaking news. First to you, Deven. What do you make of this merger? Now, 30 rupees more as part of the redeemable shares has been really offered. Do you think that CAIRN India shareholders will be happy with this?
Yeah, good evening. Well, certainly I would think so, because I think this is where an area of, little concern about, the deal. And probably, some amount of money coming back, not a problem. So I would think that, it would be a go-ahead. But more than that, CAIRN India getting into the Vedanta, to my mind, if you start looking at the other aspects of the business, you find little bit more convincing answers. They would have all the business units, coming under this one company. And probably, there are merits and there are demerits. But the merits here would be that the corporate governance issues would be well taken care of within the group. That is the first part of it, because the transfer of money from one company to another company, that situation is now saved. Second important aspect is that if you look at, the entire company as a whole, you probably find the sum of the part valuation coming up, including CAIRN India shares and minus, the debt that they would have of CAIRN India, plus the cash position that they have put together with the Vedanta share into it, is coming to somewhere around 230 rupees per share kind of a valuation coming in for the Vedanta per se. And that's where I believe that the deal could possibly go well with the investors, because on one side, you have the price of close to 190 odd, and other side, you have this opportunity of making money, through 1:1 ratio and the preferences. So certainly, I would think that a sweetener, and probably the deal should go well with the investors of CAIRN India this time.
Hold your thoughts, Deven. Over there, we also have Prakash, Diwan with us. Prakash, what do you make of this deal? Do you think that CAIRN India shareholders should take benefit of this merger and also exit, as Mr. Tulsian was alluding to?
See, it seems like definitely a reaction to the disappointment with the earlier terms, Nisha. So very clearly, this is a significant sweetener of sorts. And if you're getting a 30-40 rupee markup, which gets calculated on this pref share, at the current levels. The only thing what worries me is the timing of this event, the timing of this announcement is after Vedanta shares have run up quite a bit. So naturally, this is kind of to justify that. And the CAIRN share has also kind of had some stellar performance in today's session, which, there would be people who were expecting this kind of a turnout. But there's nothing great about Vedanta in the present set of the business. It is only after this merger takes place, you would give it about some 2-3 quarters, see how things work out, and then the company becomes worth it. Right now, if you're getting this price from CAIRN, which has also got no bright future ahead in terms of the crude business and all, it's definitely something which helps you get a very, very profitable exit, which seems fair at the current juncture in the current arrangement.
Right, but Mr. Tulsian, coming back to you then, what do you think will be the investment strategy now going forward with this mega behemoth being formed of the metal and mining business and now with oil and gas business? Are we seeing a trend emerging in that direction? And obviously you have shared your views on both these companies. How do you see the markets overall and the impact on some of the other stocks in the sectors?
See, Nisha, again, this can only be truthfully replied by the promoters of both the companies, that is Vedanta Group. Now, if you really see this, the reasoning which they've given in the past is the forming a natural resources company. Because when the merger of maybe Hindustan Zinc coming under that one, earlier it was into Sterlite and Vedanta was separate. Aluminium was held by Vedanta in Vedanta Aluminium. Sterlite was holding its stake in Hindustan Zinc, which had 51% Balco and 65% stake in zinc business. At that time, they've said that we are bringing in non-ferrous into one fold. Fine, fair enough. We got convinced with that. Then they are bringing in Sesagoa, which is a ferrous again. So then they said that the natural, then they said the metal. Now they are bringing in the crude into the company. So they've changed it to natural resources. So ferrous, then metal, then natural resources. Now they are giving a comparison that we want to form a company like BHP Billiton. Now, if you really see this situation, we have those who have been in the market for ages, or maybe for last one decade, we have always seen that foreign investors, global investors have never liked the hodgepodge of too many businesses under one company. So that is why then why you are you are bringing in all this company under one Vedanta. If you go by the group strategy, here all the natural resources companies are merged into one, that is Vedanta. On the other hand, in Sterlite Technology, they are hiving off the division of the telecom and the transmission. On the ground, that transmission will be requiring huge investment of 10,000 crore borrowing and all that. So you need to have two companies. So I'm honestly, if you really ask me, by taking the group philosophy also, I have not been able to derive the true intention of this merger is being created. On one hand, the smaller companies are bifurcated in two. On the larger front, you are merging 4 or 5 companies, which each business qualifies on its individual basis. Take the case of iron ore. Now, Supreme Court permissions have all been there. So again, the things once iron ore prices will start recovering, then again iron ore business can itself become very big. So what I could only be able to sense is that intention is only to make use of the CAIRN and Hindustan Zinc share, the surplus money. Because under Companies Act, each one is independent. Suppose if I'm a shareholder of a private limited company holding entire 100% shares, even I can't take even a single rupee of the company, even that private limited company has any number of amount. Under the Income Tax Act, that will be deemed as a deemed dividend and taxes will attract. And in the listed company, the provisions are more onerous. So to have a free flow or to have the access to the surplus fund of a CAIRN and Hindustan Zinc by Vedanta for their drain business like aluminium of 45,000 crore, this whole scheme seems to have is being structured. Yeah.
Mr. Diwan, what do you make of the stock reaction on Monday morning? Do you think that CAIRN and Vedanta will also continue to rise the way they were in the trades today?
I don't think so, Nisha. The good part is already out. Everybody now knows the math. It would just be working out the exact calculation on the arbitrage between the two stocks. because we now have a final ratio of the terms attached to this. So my sense is there won't be any stellar performance that you would expect on Monday. It would just be a corrective adjustment that will happen. And as I said, it makes sense to get out of CAIRN given the kind of value that it's fetching as on today, and which would possibly reflect on Monday as well, and move out of this business if you were a CAIRN shareholder.
Right. Mr. Tulsian, what do you make of the corporate governance issues that you alluded to? Of course, merger ratios are decided between the two companies, but here we also have the government as a party, and government will have to really take the CAIRN-Vedanta merged shares in lieu of the CAIRN PLC shares that is hanging there because of the tax issues. How do you think that will really pan out? Because clearly Vedanta has proposed to the government to take Vedanta shares. Of course, it will be a huge overhang on the stock, but on the other hand, precedent does not really show that we have solved these matters very easily in the past.
See, Nisha, that is what, in fact, I've said when I started expressing my view. I've said that now take, for instance, the way CAIRN PLC is holding 10% stake in CAIRN India, which has been, there is a stay on transfer of those holdings. Now, suppose if government feels that CAIRN standalone can have higher value, or maybe once the CAIRN India gets merged with Vedanta, the share price of Vedanta will collapse. In fact, we have seen the good precedents having set, happening in case of all the companies which got merged, has got seen the huge value destruction. So it is for the government and LIC to take a call that if they feel that Vedanta is, because ultimately CAIRN India shares will get converted into Vedanta. And suppose if LIC and government feels that the Vedanta share price will fall thereafter, then no wise counsel will prevail upon them to allow to proceed with this merger. Come on the preferential shares or preference shares which are being issued now, having a value of 40 rupees, because I'm presuming that this litigation will go on for years. I don't think that these issues can get sorted out. So maybe after 18 months, they will be able to salvage 40 rupees, which will again remain in the bank or, whatever it is. So it is for the LIC and government to take a call that what will be the value, whether it will be in the interest of the government to allow the 10% stake to remain via CAIRN India or via Vedanta. But that's what I said by assessing the whole situation. If I would have been in the government shoes, then I would have taken a call that yes, independently holding 10% stake in CAIRN India will retain its value rather than allowing it to get merged with Vedanta Limited. Yeah.
All right. So hold on there, Mr. Tulsian. Prakash is here with us in the studio. What do you make of the various things that are mentioned in the press release right now, Prakash? So September is when the voting will really take place. Right. It's a long time from now, and it's a cyclical business. Oil and gas is going through its own turmoil, and even the metals business. So how easy or difficult will it be to convince the shareholders? Or do you think that since there are only two chunky investors here, both LIC as well as CAIRN PLC, it will be easy to really get votes in their favor?
So, even out of the two, I think it's the moot question is going to be what LIC decides with its stake, because that's going to be the swinging factor in this case. And essentially, this particular merger has never been very favorable in terms of wealth creation or, any value creation that could happen. And as Mr. Tulsian was also pointing out, all of us have understood and accepted the fact that it's more to utilize the surplus cash that Vedanta has always had eyes on. Even in the past, but which is lying with CAIRN, and they could freely start using that to do whatever capex they feel is proper or appropriate at this point in time. But given the fact that we are in a cyclical business with different points in the cycle, be it metals and be it oil and gas, CAIRN could probably stand on its own feet if things go well, after a while on the crude side. And Vedanta doesn't need to kind of have crutches given to it. So that's where the essential question is. So if the shareholders decide, if LIC particularly has realized that this is not going to be favorable, it could probably still have its way. The sweetener is essentially, I think, in response to the earlier disappointment that was expressed by the shareholders, and that's what they're trying to do. Now, whether the math is still favorable would of course be dependent on how they interpret this in the future in terms of their expectations or their targets from this business. But to me, if there's no option but to go ahead with the merger, it's very easy for a minority shareholder to make some exit from CAIRN and say, okay, thank you very much. There's not much of value that you are creating. Let me get out of it at a good price.
And how much of a overhang will be the tax issues with the government on the stocks?
So quite a bit, because see, we've already seen CAIRN has been grappling with those tax issues even in the past, which remain unresolved to a large extent. And this would kind of only add to the complications of this particular transaction. So my sense is that it's a fairly vexatious transaction in terms of the potential areas of unresolved disputes or unresolved topics. So it's not something which you can kind of write off very easily, saying just because there's a merger that's happening, it's going to be completely gone through. But the entire issuance of preference shares, and that too with an 18-month redemption period, with a 1 rupee coupon that they would fetch in that 18 months, it's something where it kind of talks about extending or buying time for the sweetener also, so that cash flows don't get strained for whatever reasons. It's helpful to Vedanta. So it's definitely in favor of Vedanta at this point in time. Vedanta PLC would probably be the most significant beneficiary here. So I would believe minority shareholders have something to think, but because there's a minority, you can't do much about probably averting a situation that could finally be the merger going through.
All right. And Mr. Tulsian, of course, you have had a very critical view on the two companies. But purely from the standpoint of the markets, of course, it's a large conglomerate that Vedanta is, Vedanta plus CAIRN. Do you think it's not in future a winning combination once, obviously, the debt burden of Vedanta is taken care of with both the forces coming in together? And probably later, since all of these are cyclical businesses, if oil starts doing well and metals also come back in shape, then in future, when things are way better on the debt front, then things would look better as a CAIRN, as a Vedanta shareholder at least?
See, Nisha, if you are taking that extreme positive that iron ore will do well, zinc, in my view, can never go in the drain for the next 10 years also. You say aluminum will do very well, Balco with 5 lakh ton capacity per annum. You say that copper business will do very well. You say that crude will do very well. And now everything is into the Vedanta. That is, if the CAIRN merger happens, then I don't think that even a child needs to be explained that, yes, that company will be a very big, star in the time to come. But let me just come on the other aspect. See the Vedanta. Vedanta is issuing 4 preference shares for every 1 share if this merger goes through. That means they say that we will be paying you 40 rupees. Sometimes, it's a mockery, or I feel like laughing. A debt-ridden company is saying that we will pay you 40 rupees to a cash-rich company. Now, from where that money will come? Ultimately, that money will come from CAIRN India. Take the second scenario. It is good that government is holding 29.5% in Hindustan Zinc. If the government would have exited, we would have seen a move initiated by the Vedanta Group for merger of Hindustan Zinc also in Vedanta Limited. So my point is that if you are taking the extreme positive view that all natural resources will do well, and in that situation Vedanta share price can move to 1,000. So in that case, I can say that even CAIRN can.
Is currently busy.
Right. Prakash, coming to this particular point that he was mentioning, of course, Mr. Tulsian doesn't think so much that it will be positive very soon. But from CAIRN India's shareholders' point of view, you think that it is going to be taking the benefit out of this particular merger, because oil and gas, even though it's not doing that well, but it is definitely doing better than the metals business. And there's a lot of overhang when it comes to Vedanta.
No, absolutely. See, I'll tell you there are 2 things, and I'll just add to what Mr. Tulsian is saying, that all these commodity cycles are not going to be evenly matched or perform in unison or in some sort of a equilibrium. So if oil goes up and then starts firming up, it's not necessary that metals would also rally. to the extent that today the oil business is much more stabilized and much more, it has much more visibility in terms of potential improvement as and when that happens. So what is happening to CAIRN India? Your core business of coming up with crude and finally making the most of that business is kind of being given to another business which is unrelated, but okay, it has a common ownership at the end of the day. That's the only thing that's binding them together. But it's my own money that's coming back to me. I mean, so I buy a share, I get a share of Vedanta plus some more money, which in any case is adding up to the same value that I had today. So is it really value accretive? It's not. So, the whole point is, as I said, if the merger goes through, the minority shareholders really don't have a choice but to just give in. And that's not something which is like a great idea at this point in time. So I hope somebody wakes up to that possibility of creating value and not just kind of merging the two companies just because of a balance sheet convenience and overriding certain restrictions on cash usage and things like that. So let's be very clear for the CAIRN shareholder. It's your own money coming back with the simple math of 40 rupees plus the Vedanta stock, and maybe over 18 months that too. It's not even a thing that's going to come into your account today. So, the realizable levels of this whole merger, of this benefit to the CAIRN minority shareholders are extended. It's too long drawn. Nothing very great, but if the merger goes through, it's only because of some large so-called minority shareholders giving in and agreeing to it.
That's a fair point, in fact, Prakash. Mr. Tulsian, coming to that one, of course, it's a very good point that he made. And looking at the history of Vedanta Group also, they had every stage for cash management really gone in for that merger. So there was Sesa Sterlite, which really happened. And then, of course, Hindustan Zinc cash was used. And now, of course, CAIRN India's cash is getting used for subsidizing some other business which is really not doing well. So that has been a trend when it comes to Vedanta Group. What do you say, and how do you view such conglomerates which have been doing this cash management time and again?
See, Nisha, actually, I started again, just the same thing which you have repeated here. And in fact, I've added the example of Madras Aluminium also. The similar company, having cash at that point of time with an aluminium smelter of 40,000 ton and about 160 megawatt power. And we forget that small merger. So if you see, that's in fact I've repeated 2 or 3 times that if you go by the past precedents of the merger having made by this Vedanta Group of Sesa Sterlite, of Sesa Goa, and then first Sesa Goa into Sesa Sterlite, and then Madras Aluminium into this Vedanta. What has been the end results? The money has gone into the drain. That's what precisely my point is. If you would have all these companies standing individually, one for the copper smelter and one for the Madras Aluminium, one for the Sesa Goa, the things and situation would have been different. But just to save the 45,000 crore dead investment which the group has initiated 5, 6, 7 years back in Odisha, and to salvage that money or to finance that money, this all exercise, they are forced to do that. And that's what I have categorically used, that if Hindustan Zinc would have been in their control on an individual and on a sole basis, they would have merged that company also with Vedanta.
Oh, that's right, actually, Mr. Tulsian. So, Prakash, then how do you see how much of market momentum will really impact these two particular stocks? And till September, how do you see the levels? Because the entire voting is still some time away.
Sure. No, so in the first place, this entire run-up that you saw on Friday is something which was pretty difficult to explain when it happened. Now we kind of, you put it in perspective, and in hindsight, this is what was in the offing. But the performance on pure fundamentals does not behave well for CAIRN's price to be at the current levels. And secondly, Vedanta also, the kind of run-up that we've seen, given the kind of moves in the metal side, have been fairly, I would say, exuberant. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's a shift in the market mood of some sorts, more from a global issue or something. Things could be very tough for both these stocks, and particularly, I hope Vedanta doesn't slip, because that's where value erosion will start happening for a CAIRN shareholder. You're finally going to get a share of Vedanta, and if that plummets, you really are holding the baby and really not much to kind of smile about. So till September is a long time in today's market conditions, to be honest, and a lot could go wrong. It could kind of also go right. But given the portents and the overpriced levels at which both these stocks are, particularly CAIRN is performing, I wouldn't be surprised if there's some sort of a shift from both these stocks and people would kind of get tired of me holding any of these and moving out of this. So not a very great expectation in terms of market movement upwards at least.
All right. Thanks so much, Mr. Tulsian and Mr. Diwan, for joining us with your expert take on this mega merger that has been announced second time this time, because last time it didn't go through, and this time the merger agreement details have been changed. In fact, Vedanta Group held its meeting today, and in the board meeting what they decided upon is 1:1 swap ratio when it comes to CAIRN-Vedanta merger, which means that CAIRN shareholders would get 1 share of Vedanta each. But the sweetener here has been increased. Earlier it was 1 preference share. Now it has been increased to 4 preference shares, which means that 30 rupees extra on each share held. So therefore, if there is a sweetener, and both the stocks have been euphoric for quite some time now. So that particular merger, again, one more step taken for that merger consummation. Of course, there are very many variables on the path to the final consummation of this particular deal, and September will be the time when the final voting will be done. Of course, 2 important players here, that is CAIRN PLC as well as LIC, they will have to vote in favor of this. And third, of course, government and the tax issues with CAIRN PLC has to be resolved before really this merger takes place. So many variables there. A sweetener has been put on the table. That stock reaction would be closely watched out for. For now, it's a wrap on this breaking news, but we'll get back with more on this and much more news on the other side.